Sam, thanks so much for speaking with me today and being on the podcast. I want to start at the beginning because your journey as an endurance athlete has taken you across numerous challenging terrains and pushed you to your limits. I think it's fair to say. It's not exactly an easy life and career choice. Can you take us back to the moment that sparked your passion for this path?
Yeah, I'm so excited to have this chat. We've done so many articles over the years, so it's nice to be able to kind of see each other face to face.
Yeah.
It is not a glamorous career path. I think the push to the start line, but also from the start line to whatever is the finishing line. And it's very unpredictable. And I think it takes a certain type of person to be kind of comfortable with that. But for me, I would say like my background doesn't almost lend me to the person who can do this. I come from a background being a bit rigid, A-type personality. I can get really stuck in a process. And so I've had to really work on the fact that a part of being an ultra athlete is like building your confidence to get to a start line, working with a process, then abandoning it because you've got to go with whatever circumstances are in front of you. And for me, it kind of began when I realized the power of trails, not even trail running, but like the trails. That's the origin for me. It's like a restoration place. It's a place where I don't fret about what's past or what's to come. And I get to play. And I think finding play as an adult is really powerful. Like kids are so good at it, but somehow we lose our way at some point. And so in my final years of high school, my mum was like, go on the trails. Like we lived in Listerfield Lake, or very close to it. And I was a bit of a study nerd, which I'm proud of now. But I didn't know it was a good thing. And so I would hop on the trails and it'd be a great place. And then as I got to university, I was studying a law degree. And I thought that's what I was going to be. I was going to be a lawyer. I started a job as a corporate lawyer at Baker & McKenzie. And I kept finding ways to be away from the desk, thinking, oh, they don't understand me, and really just wasn't the right place for me. And so I guess one of the easiest ways of being away at the desk is kind of moving and having a legitimate career path that forces you to move all the time. And so I fell into it as like a desire to seek something more, to feel more fulfilled, to go into locations around the world that sparked my curiosity. And so I think endurance athlete as a career kind of came more from looking for something more.
I can't imagine two more different pathways than falling into law and doing being an endurance athlete. So yeah, that's phenomenal that's where you started, and also that the words of your mum kind of were the instigating part to that as well. In 2010, at the age of 25, you became the first woman and the youngest person at the time to complete the 4 deserts Grand Slam. So 4 250-kilometre desert ultramarathons completed in 4 deserts in the world. So Atacama, Gobi, Sahara, and the Antarctic in 1 calendar year. And at the time, only 2 male athletes had completed the challenge. Can you share more on that experience and what led you to take that on?
Oh, talk about baptism of fire, where you don't know what you don't know, and therefore naivety is amazing. So this was like the start of my ultra running career. And I read about these 2 Australian guys who had done a 250-kilometre run in the Sahara Desert. And so like I read about that and I was really intrigued, and then I jumped on this website called 4 Deserts, and I started to follow athletes taking it on, and they got to write a blog each night as they were doing this stage race. And I remember not knowing anyone doing this, these people from other parts of the world, like South Africa and, all different parts. And I was captivated by their stories because it was so raw and real, because they were writing as they were still in it. And then a couple of months later, I met this lady called Linda Quirk. She was an American. She was in her 50s. And I met her in Melbourne as she was doing the Melbourne Marathon as a part of like a series of events she was doing. And I was doing my very first marathon. And for me, that was the pinnacle. Like that was endurance sports. And I met her and she told me that she was doing these 4 deserts races the following year. And I was like, oh, I've heard about this stuff. Like it just kind of seemed to all come together. And I was so inspired by her that I decided to sign up for one of the events. And it was like a massive leap because I barely finished the marathon. So to then kind of say, oh, yeah, I'm going to do essentially 6 marathons in 5 or 6 days seems like, catapulting yourself into the unknown. But I liked
to put it mildly.
Yeah, take it just, it was a big thing. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I think that helped signing up. And then I got there, and it was harder than I could imagine, but also more liberating than I thought. But that was meant to be it. Like I was meant to go back to being a law student, kind of progressing on the pathway. I just got my graduate job at Baker and McKenzie. It was already a big deal to take off that time from uni, but I realized that no woman had ever done all 4, and I just was like, I want to know more. I want to feel more. And I just somehow like pulled the pieces of the puzzle together to make all 4 happen in a year. And I say it like it happened so easy. It was like I managed to make the next one happen, and then the next one, and then the next one. It was like a lot of leaping frogs. But so there's a balance of like, there was a good dose of good timing for me, a bit of luck, and the reality was like just pushing really hard because I knew this was a point in time where if I just kept grinding and like trying to get a sponsor and just keep showing up, that maybe I could make this thing happen out of nowhere. And I do think that's one of my strengths. I think I can create something from nothing if I really, really believe it and I back myself. That's the formula. I've got to believe in it and I've got to back myself, and then I do the hard work to make it happen.
I want to just draw on a point that you made there just about finding a sponsor to make that happen. And we've obviously seen this big moment around women's sport in recent times. But how easy or challenging was that process in actually finding support and people to back you, companies to back you to do that?
Oh, this is like 13 years ago. It was really hard. I mean, I can be persistent, and I think you need to be, and you have to be comfortable getting a lot of no's. My very first sponsor was my university, and I told them that I was an athlete representing Australia. And I thought it was kind of true because I did put
it is true.
It was true in the sense that I did get a nationality patch on. So I was like, well, there's the Australian flag. But it's not like I was an elite athlete, and it's not like ultra running at that time was an elite sport. It wasn't classified that way, but my university backed me and helped me with my registration fee, which was incredibly expensive for anybody, but definitely a university student, kind of pulling dollars together to make it happen. And then I paid for my way to get there. But after I did the first race, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to go back to the drawing board. Like I'll pull in as much of my own money and I'll work really, really hard in between. But there was a gap between like what I needed to make it happen and what I had. And I will say right now, for anyone listening, I do think there's power in putting your skin in the game. Financially committing to making your dreams happen, I think, is a really powerful motivator to push you when it doesn't work. If you get it all paid for by a sponsor, sometimes you haven't like invested fully. And so like I always do back myself as much as I can. And then the next part is I think I wrote to over 100 different companies. And I just went from head to toe, what are all the different brands that might get involved? And then I thought about what was my uniqueness, like what was my unique proposition in this thing? And I was like, you know what? What's unique is that I'm like an everyday person who comes from a background who wasn't sporty but believes this is possible. I'm going to represent myself as the everyday person doing a grand big adventure that most people would rule themselves out on because they consider themselves to be ordinary. And that was my angle. And a brand came on board who liked that positioning. And then we started a relationship. But they said, we're not going to pay for your next registration until you finish the next race. Finish the race before. So it's not like they laid down all the rego. They did it like incrementally because I think part of them thought,
they made you work for it.
Yeah. I mean, they thought I might not do it. And so why would they put their money down? And so that's how it worked. But I mean, it was a lot of bit of soul searching and what was my proposition? What could I truly speak to? What would be authentic? And then finding the right partner. Since then, like there's times when it's really, really hard. Like when I decided to traverse India from west to east, I had had a lot of credibility to that point with the projects that I had done. And it was really, really hard. I was a woman running in a country where people deem it to be possibly unsafe. It was harder for people to think, oh, we can get behind that, and not to be like, oh, we're supporting a woman doing something dangerous. Although at the time there was a man who was doing it from north to south, and it was amazing to see like the government get behind him. Like it was like so many doors were being opened, and it felt like I was literally pushing a boulder uphill. And at times you just wish it was a little bit easier. But if you back yourself and keep going, like momentum counts. So it's hard. Like, yeah, all in all, it's hard. I speak to a lot of female athletes, particularly in the endurance space. It's really hard to get, not only is it hard to get credibility, to get the support, but once you have the support, it's hard for people to get media attention, and it's hard to get your story out. And I find a lot of women are doing these things, not just for themselves, but often for reasons beyond themselves. And that's still not good enough. So it's hard.